Welcome to Cambridge Forum. I'm Pat Zerke, Director of Cambridge Forum, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you tonight for a lively discussion indoors on a cold night outdoors with self-described storyteller Jack Landron, Remembering Freedom Summer. Our forum tonight will be led by folklorist Millie Rahn, who's done extensive research on the 60s folk music revival and on Club 47, the predecessor of Club Passim. As a working folklorist, she's curated foodways and material culture demonstrations for many regional folk festivals, including the annual Lowell Folk Festival, the American Folk Festival in Bangor, Maine, and the Working Waterfront Festival in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Her work has appeared in the Journal of American Folklore and in books and regional publications. Millie teaches as adjunct faculty in heritage studies at Plymouth State University in New Hampshire.
Well, thank you, Pat, and thank you, Cambridge Forum. Again, welcome to Cambridge Forum, discussing Witness to History, Remembering Freedom Summer with Jack Landron. Many of you know Jack as a folk singer and songwriter, known in the old days as Jackie Washington, but today we're going to hear about Jack Landron, the witness to history. As Jack says of himself, I'm not so much a singer or musician as I am a storyteller, and I can vouch for that. He's what we folklorists call a cultural elder, and Jack is going to talk about his experiences and perspectives on living through some of the events of the civil rights movement in the mid-1960s. Jack has family roots in Puerto Rico and years growing up in Boston's Roxbury neighborhood and singing many kinds of traditional and popular songs within his musical family. As well as he had theater training at Emerson College in Boston, and he has a unique perspective on the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Jack found a new direction when he traveled to Mississippi in 1964. Many folk songers went south to sing for rallies, including many right here from Cambridge. But he chose to stay in Mississippi, joining the movement and helping to form the Free Southern Theater, with which he toured as an actor. Since then, he's worked in New York and Los Angeles, reclaimed Landrón as his professional name, and concentrated on his acting career and other pursuits. So, welcome to Cambridge Forum, Jack Landron. And I will ask my first question from here, and then I'll come over and join you. Take us back to 1964, 50 years ago, and how you came to leave Boston for Mississippi.
I was a student at Emerson College, and I made my tuition. I had lost my parents in a boating accident, and I found myself responsible for my own upkeep. And I spent a lot of my inheritance, if you can call it that, foolishly, and then I had to do work to keep eating, which is something I was interested in doing. So I was a folk singer. I was a folk singer, I think by accident. In my family, a Puerto Rican family living in Roxbury, we sang aguinaldos and décimas and stuff around Christmas time. Also, I lived in a neighborhood which you walk down one of the main streets, Humboldt Avenue, and you would see Clara Ward and the Ward Singers being advertised, or you'd see rhythm and blues shows, which is what rock, I think, was called then. Johnny Ace, the Midnighters, Sonny Till. So I knew all the kind of music that the white kids in Harvard Square and other places or other gathering points, I knew all the music that they thought was folksy or ethnic or something. I knew that it was just music. So I could get a job singing music. And I did. I was also one of the people that were being studied. So like it was kind of strange being, being under a microscope, but the times were different. Because for me, singing was a job. I loved what I was doing, the music I was doing. I loved performing. But I was making money. It wasn't some study that I was involved in. It was, you want to hear folk music? I got folk music. And I sang it. A call was put out for self-contained acts to go to Mississippi because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Rev, there were more black people than white people in Mississippi, and if they would register to vote, maybe you could turn things around. Now, there were deterrents. There was the Ku Klux Klan and the White Citizens Council, and my favorite was the Society for the Preservation of the White Race. And I always used to joke that white people didn't have much confidence in their genes because they had to preserve the white race. But okay, I'll go. And I went to, I decided to go to Mississippi to do voter registration. Everything that happened in black communities happened in churches. I mean, you didn't go to you went to the church. So there would be gatherings, and the pastor, minister of that particular church would say a few remarks, and then they would introduce me and other folk singers who were giving similar concerts in other such places. He would introduce me, and I would do a little program concentrating pretty much on songs that that community would know that I was, and with sing-alongs. And they had wonderful singers there, and have a wonderful time. And at a certain point, other workers from COFO, the Council of Federated Organizations, would come with the pitch, register to vote. It was kind of a hard sell because of the influence of the groups I just mentioned, the Ku Klux Klan and so on. How did it go? My family put the B in bourgeois, and but I would play at Club 47. First it was at 47 Mount Auburn Street. And then there was some kind of beef about the rent. I don't know what it was. And they moved finally to 47 Palmer Street, where they sort of still are. It's now called Passim, but it's Club 47 is the, wouldn't you say that's the rallying cry? All of my audiences were white kids from college and whatnot. 97% white kids, many of them from families with some bread. They had, and they were studying, as I said before. It was a hobby, I thought. But I, as I want to do, I said when I was going to go to Mississippi, well, going to Mississippi, anybody want to join me? You come see me after the show. And there were, I guess I had 4 black kids that followed me, would come to the club. And one of them, whose name is now Mustafa Halak, but was Roger Johnson, he said, I'll go with you. It was wonderful, okay. Because when you're younger, a lot of things are exciting, and you disguise the fact that you might be a little bit frightened anyway, but it's an adventure. Ooh, ha, 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 ha. A lot of things that I did then I wouldn't do now. Of course, a lot of things I can't do that I did back then, but that's another story. And we drove to Mississippi. Roger was a little more street smart than I. So it was decided we would stop in Atlanta and change the license plates and then drive into Mississippi because it looked, and also I was driving a Rover, a Delphinium Blue Rover 100 with fruitwood dashboard and leather seat, upholstery, And Roger said, no, man, we got to do something about this. No, so like, got Georgia plates. That was as far as we could go because I wasn't going to sell my car and get another one. So we proved to be a good combination because it was a different culture that I found when I got to Mississippi. First of all, I loved it. I thought it was wonderful. The Southern thing is like that politeness that people have, and all the cows and the trees. What do you call those things? What are hanging down? Hanging up. It wasn't like Roxbury, and it was exciting. But we went into town. Oh, well. The headquarters of the Council of Federated Organizations, which is where we reported when we got in Jackson, Mississippi, was on Lynch Street. Gave you pause. But then we decided we would, we'd get something. We went into town, and we got planters' hats. We had these straw hats, and we bent them up, and then blue jeans and work shirt like Pete Seeger wore, and we were pretty things. And I remember there was a white man from Central Casting. It looked like he had on a straw hat and suspenders, and quite often men of a certain age wear their pants up here. So, and I'm starting to do that now because, whoa. But at any rate, this man comes up to us and he said, hi, hello. And then he, small talk. And then he said, where y'all from? And we said, we were from Boston. Well, why don't y'all go back where you come from? We don't need you messing in our business here. And he had been so nice, we got into a conversation with him quite easily. But realized that, hey, we might meet some people who were a little bit more energetic in there telling us to go on back where we came from. What we did was there were people who would volunteer to house the workers. And we stayed with a variety of families, which was, again, I won't say culture shock, but certainly weird. A place I stayed in with the Teague family. I remember their names. My memory isn't too good about many things. But I remember the Teague family, large family, and they were farmers. And I stayed with that family, and they gave me breakfast. The breakfast that they eat looked like a Thanksgiving dinner. They had pork chops with gravy. They had eggs and bacon and sausages. They had mashed potatoes. They had vegetables. And I looked at this. I couldn't believe. You talk about a groaning board. It groaned. And I was saying, what is this about? These people went out to do work. And you needed food to do work. Also, what was memorable about staying with that family, which I thought was characterized my Mississippi adventure, they didn't have air conditioning, so in the evening it was warm. After dishes were done or whatever, you sit on the porch, and there were a collection of rocking chairs, and you sit up there and chit-chat, and people going by, whether you knew them or not, how do. And I thought that's great. People talk to you. Isn't this lovely? This particular night, the Klan, the Klux Klan, had a parade through the neighborhood, to this black neighborhood. And there were cars, convertibles. And people sat with their feet on the back seat and sitting on the, you know how that is. Anyway, they were dressed in these outfits. The hooded outfit, but the hood didn't cover the face. There was a little like a visor thing, but the pointed hat, and some of them they weren't all white, the robes. Just want to be clear. They were, some were green satin, and there was a black satin, and these people, and they were, I described the other man as from Central Casting. A lot of these people in this parade looked like they were from Central Casting because they had these, no lips. I mean, you know, and sharp noses and you know, stern faces, and they had sparklers, you know, like you get on 4th of July. Well, they were people were carrying them in the parade, or they were stuck in the car, and these people looked so ridiculous to me. So I'm sitting there with the Teague family, and they passed by, and the neighborhood was watching this parade, and it was silent. But I'm looking at this thing, and I go, whoa, and Mr. Teague said, shut up. It wasn't funny. It was serious. But when you see something that is so very different from anything you've known, surely I knew something about difficulties that you might have being non-white in the world at that time. But it was never treated the way I saw there in Mississippi. It was just, is this really happening? And it was funny. Mr. Teague, probably saved me by letting me know that might look silly to you, but this is serious. At that time, there were 3 volunteers in the same organization I was working with that had been abducted and weren't yet found. Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman. They were later found. It seems like Mississippi is fertile because they have all these places where things are overgrown and everything. It's very easy to hide a body. Swamp stuff, I don't know. And I knew that these workers were missing. Everybody was talking about it. But there's something about the whole experience that was, and my youth, that made it exciting and not scary. It didn't get scary to me until Fredericksburg, where I was staying in a house where I taught kids things, freedom schools they call them. You had to, you know, and it was at the top of a hill. Here's an old plantation house, you know, the antebellum, whatever that is, up the top of this hill, and then the hill went down to the street, which was the intersection was an intersection where another road came up. It was 2 hills meeting. And somebody drove a car up this hill, stopped the car, got out, and looked up at the house in which we were staying and took a rifle and shot at it. Bang, bang, bang. And we were laughing. We said, ooh, we're ducking down. But we were scared to death. It was a gun, somebody shooting at us. And although we were laughing at the excitement of it, I think it was nervous laughter. Because I wasn't the only one that hadn't seen anything like this. Am I rambling? I mean,
No.
get me started. I mean, I'm just trying to remember. I didn't prepare any remarks. So many experiences I had that helped me address life. You know, when you have things that just happen that are instructive to you, and it changes the youthful devil-may-care attitude you may have. I got it in Mississippi. So much so, skipping ahead, it was like 106 degrees, hot. And we were going around and they're afraid you're going to get shot or somebody was going to do something awful. I woke up one morning with exquisite pain, didn't know what was going on, and I was taken to the University of Mississippi Hospital. I had gotten pericarditis. The heart is inside a sac of fluid, and many things stress or whatnot can make it so that that sac of liquid will pierce and the heart will be beating up against your rib cage, and it ain't fun. So that to me was also something very life-changing. I'd never been sick. And then I was going into a hospital in Mississippi, and I associated Mississippi with things that may not have been truly. They were true. Thank you. Mississippi did not present, fun and games thoughts to me. As I'm going to the Mississippi University Hospital. It was a nerve-wracking time. At the same time that it was fun. I also think that and I want to address this. My name is Juan Cándido Washington Landrón. I've always been Jack Landron. In school, I was called Juan Landron. The J in Spanish is aspirated, Juan, Juan Landron. And hated Juan Landron. But when I performed, I thought Jackie Washington was cool. So that's what I used. Then when I finished Emerson College and I was going on to do what I studied there, I was, Juan Landron again. And then people would ask me to sing, and I said, oh, Jack Landron, Jack Landron. I have been having more trouble on this little tour I'm on because people, well, when you changed your name, I lost track. I didn't change it. I was always been Jack Landron, but I'm telling y'all that I'm the same guy. But anyway, it was strange to be a Puerto Rican. I'm very American, but I'm Puerto Rican. And my grandfather used to tell me, he said, you are not a Negro. An English person goes back to England, a French person goes to France, a German person goes to Germany. A Negro, there is no Negro land. You are a Puerto Rican and you belong to Puerto Rico. And a Negro, that is ex-property. I was taught that, it was told to me many times, and I believed it. I would never say it to my fellow black people because it's offensive, but I believe it on some way. I have Puerto Rico en mi corazón. So I didn't think, although I knew folks weren't crazy about black folks, I didn't have the same frame of mind in addressing the situation. I certainly wanted segregation and all that stuff to end for personal reasons, but I wasn't looking at it the same way black Americans did. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it was a constant surprise to me, things that would happen. A surprise that was, I think that in every bad thing there's something good if you can dig it out and learn from it. And I was able to do that. Being in Mississippi, I saw hatred up close and saw how, in many cases, stupid it was, how mindless it was, how necessary it was, because no matter how poor and beat down some of these white folks were, they were better than a nigger. And I was part of a group that were there to take that away from them. This is something that's, if you get in the right frame of mind, these are desperate people. We went to a church where they had bombed 4 little girls you remember that? Is it Alabama?
Birmingham, yep.
So one of the things, I was to give a concert in this place, and as I told you, the minister gets up and talks first. And people were on edge. They were killed. They were killed. And the minister got up and spoke. That's another thing I digress for a minute. The way you do in Protestant churches, black Protestant church, the speeches are deep. They're wonderful. So this guy, minister, got up, and by way of trying to bolster the people's courage or whatnot, he gave a little talk. It wasn't a sermon. It was just a little talk to tell why I was there. And the talk he gave consisted of one sentence. A mule kicks hardest before he dies. I said, a mule kicks hardest before he dies. A mule kicks hardest before he dies. A mule kicks hardest before he dies. Every time he said that sentence, he said it a different way. And after a couple of minutes, people say, yeah, yeah, give me that paper, I'll sign. It was just wonderful oratory that is born of a tradition that was very much alive there in Mississippi as in other parts of the South. This was ever so exciting to me. I bunch of us, 4 of us, rented a house in Tougaloo, Mississippi. And we would joke that Tougaloo sounds like something you say when you're leaving a place. Tougaloo! But anyway, they had a field. There was a field on either side of the house. To my left, when I walk out the door, there was a big field, and a lady would come in the morning and put her cow in this field. And I saw that, and I was at that time recuperating from this pericarditis I told you about. I was been released from the hospital, and I was home. And I saw the lady, so it struck up a conversation, and it came out that I'd never milked a cow. You never milked a cow before? You never? Come on down here. So, we go in the field, and there's this smelly cow that was there in the field, her cow, and a stool and a pail, and she grabbed, the udder, that's what, with these, and she's squeezing these things, and boom, the milk is coming out. Now you try. So I got there and I grabbed these little things, and I'm doing what I could, and nothing is coming out, and the cow took the tail and hit me in the head. It was kind of weird to know that that's where milk comes from, not cartons or bottles, It was very strange. Education. The other field on the other side, they set up a tent for a revival meeting. And sitting at home at night, I heard them singing. I didn't go over because I wasn't yet walking around. All them women sang like Aretha Franklin. They sang beautifully. I mean, everybody had a wonderful voice. And the way they do it in those churches is if you have a favorite hymn, you ask for it to be sang, and you can lead the hymn. So it's like a record, there's the lead voice, and then there's people doing in the back. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful stuff. Now, I asked if I was rambling because I'm not telling this in chronological order. I'm just talking about things that impressed me in answer to your question.
And this is the value of oral history, right? I mean, these are not the things that you see in history books and what impresses me, well, several things, that you spent time there, you lived there, you worked with families, children, older people. Did you know anything about Mississippi from Boston? Were there any people from Mississippi that you came across at school?
I'm sure. I just didn't know anybody or anything. I mean, I went to school. My neighborhood was a predominantly black neighborhood. It was a neighborhood that had been Jewish. Almost all of our merchants were Jewish. Wiggle, 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 fish market. The wiggle, wiggle being the Yiddish written. Bakeries and everything. But the houses used to be owned by these Jewish people. As a matter of fact, there was one family that lived next door to us on Monroe Street in Roxbury. And the Povermans, Sarah and Saul. You can't get more, Sarah and Saul Pullman. And they loved me. I loved them. They hadn't yet moved to Newton or Brookline or wherever they was. And my grandfather is from Spain. And he has that kind of accent. My grandmother is from, it was the Danish West Indies, and she had a different way of speaking. And I used to mimic them. My grandmother she spent most of her life in Puerto Rico, and that's where she got married. But she was and she talking like that. She'd say when she's talking English, she'd say that something is hottening on the stove, or it was a whole, and she brought that. My grandfather, he was talking a different way, that way. So like I would always imitate them. So I had an ear for a language. And with the Povermans, my father thought it was so much fun that I would, when family friends would come over, he'd say, "You got to hear this kid. Come over here." Because I thought that a lawnmower was a cut grasser. You know what is a cut grasser? You take that and cut the grass, And I own a forest in Israel somewhere, because every time I got good marks, we got a tree for you. So they planted a tree. So what I was bringing to this work in Mississippi was different from and the lens through which I viewed what was going on was different. I don't think that it was great shakes to be black anywhere. I think that America is a racist country. This is not accusatory. I mean, I think we're all racist because the country is racist. In Germany, everybody's German. In America, we're Negroes or Native, we parse it. We don't refer to each other as just Americans. I think it's a racist society. And I am racist too, just we all are. But we practice whatever we practice and believe whatever we believe based on different sets of tradition, history, whatever. And going into Mississippi and seeing segregation and we hate you, we're going to lynch you, or whatever that is, up close, as opposed to reading it in a magazine or something, it's unreal. I felt that a lot of the black kids people that were there, they knew what that was about in a different way than I knew what it was about. What I told you before about laughing at the Klan. It was silly, but it wasn't silly to a lot of people because they knew what it was. So it was very much an education for me. And it shapes who I am today.
Now, you crossed paths with Dr. King in Mississippi. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Vicksburg. And occasionally, every now and then, Dr. King would come to Mississippi to help with the voter registration because he's a great orator and all that sort of, he was famous. And we called him the Lord. Oh, the Lord coming. And so that was Dr. King. And we're in Vicksburg, outside this church. Big crowd. We're all waiting for Dr. King and Dr. Abernathy to show up. And Roger and I were there. He was then Roger. I told you he's Mustafa now. He showed up. I played a Passim, and he showed up. And I kept wanting to call him Roger, but he's Mustafa. The car pulls up. And murmur. Oh, isn't it wonderful? Roger says, "Come on, man." What? Come on. And I followed Roger. We were wearing our little costume that I described earlier. And he walked up to the car, put his hand on the handle, opened the door and said, "Good evening, sir. You about ready?" "Oh, we're just about as ready as we're going to be," says Dr. King. And he gets out the car. Abernathy gets out the car. And Roger starts walking up and I'm walking on, he's on the right and I was on the left, watching Roger to see what I'm supposed to do. And we walked up to the front of the church, and when we got to the chancel, Roger went to his side, and I went to my side, and we stood there at parade rest, and Dr. King and Dr. Abernathy would, after the resident minister gave his little talk, whatever, they gave their speeches. And when they finished, Dr. King came over to me and shook my hand and thanked me. And he went over they went over to Roger, both of them went over to Roger and thanked him. And then Roger and I walked down the aisle and led back to the car. So now I know Dr. King, right? So then I got to be a member of the Free Southern Theater. And we presented we had a production of In White America, and that was it's a theater piece that is made up of quotes from magazines or speeches or whatever, put together in a theater piece form. And Dr. King saw it, and he complimented me. My role was to come out in my outfit. Let's take a moment here. I was sharp. And I walked out there. I had this hat and this thing and my guitar slung over my back. And I would walk on. Now, this is the rehearsal. I would come out and say, "Good evening. Tonight we're going to see a play. It's a play about us. Not as we are, but as we must be." And then I would take the guitar out from around my back and start strumming, "Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom." And then the other actors would stand up in the places they were sitting in the audience, and they would come up to the stage, and we would do the show. So that's what we rehearsed. The first place we got, I'm the first person on the stage, right? And I came out with my little outfit so full of myself, and I said, "Good evening." And everybody said, "How do? Good evening." I said, "Whoa." "Tonight we're going to see a play." "Mm-hmm, that's right." "It's a play about us." "Well, go ahead, son, take your time." "Not as we are." I said, "Why are they talking to me? I'm up here. I'm doing this here." What? But after a while, I liked the amens and things you get because they'll let you know how you were doing. To wit, another one of the speeches was from Marcus Garvey, who was a black nationalist. And his speech was, "We are too great and powerful a people to grovel in the white man's oppressive dust. No more sycophantic begging and pleading. No more begging for crumbs that fall from the table. The time will come, and it won't be long, when the command will be given, 'Come home, home to Africa.'" That's the rehearsal. Gil Moses was doing that. He got up and he said, "We are too great and powerful a people to grovel in a white man's oppressive." "I know it's the truth." "Yes, Lord." "No more sycophantic begging." No. "Begging for crumbs from the..." "No, we ain't going to beg him. No, I'm telling you, he's right. The time will come and it won't be long." "I know it's the truth." "Go ahead, son. The command will be given." "Yes, Lord. Come home." "Yes, come home to Africa." People decided they were going to ride that horse, ride it until the wheels fell off. They weren't going back to Africa. Anyway, this experience led to Roger was in jail. He'd gotten himself arrested, and I was a go-to guy. and I became a personal assistant to Dr. King. I tell everyone I was a personal assistant to Dr. King because I was. I traveled around and I would do things, but what I really was, I was a gopher. I wonder if they have any of that pound cake over there. I'd go get the pound cake. I hear they have good catfish here. He loved catfish. So I'd go out and to get a plate of food. Now, Dr. King was a chick magnet. And all those ladies wanted to, so like I go out and I get to get the plate, and ladies said, I'll take it to him. Give me the plate, lady. I ain't afraid to hit a woman. So like the thing was, everybody wanted to get in to see him, and it was just, but like it was my gig. It was my gig. Can't beat that. I'm sorry.
There's so many directions to go in. So how long were you down there? So you were in your mid-20s.
Early 20s.
Early 20s, okay. And how long were you down there?
Not an entire year, but like what we each did. Joan Baez went down. Everybody went there, but they went down and did a gig, a concert or something. Some of them bigger concerts than others, and then they would go away. I decided to stay this summer. It was interrupted twice. Once because I had to go back to Boston to do a gig of my own because I wanted some money. And then for the time that I was in the hospital. So, but I was there for almost a year.
Now, you talked about not knowing a whole lot about Mississippi until you actually saw it. Did you talk about Boston to people in Mississippi and what was similar, what was different, as you're sitting there swinging on the porch at night?
No.
Did you speak Spanish to them?
No. Back in those days, first place, I went to school in Boston, in Roxbury, and at that time, we were discouraged, not just Hispanics, but you were discouraged from practicing or living your heritage. We're in America now, and we speak English. The only people that didn't have a success with telling them not to speak the language of their parents were the Chinese. Would say yes, yes, and then go wang, 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 and they'd go back home. They would speak Chinese. But we didn't. I didn't. My Spanish is lousy, because I'm not supposed to speak Spanish. So that's something that I kind of am resentful about. I think that I was robbed of my heritage. I know enough Spanish to, you go and see the old folks and you say the limited things that you say, but I can't really conduct an intelligent conversation without resorting to English at some point. So I feel bad about that. And in answer to your question, I'm saying that to say, no, people, especially white people, were not differentiated about black people. If you were black, you were all black. That was it. And I had one experience here at Club 47 where there was a guy who wanted to form a group with me. We'd have an act, and it was a gospel group. I just assumed that I knew how to do that. I don't know what that is. If you want to sing the kind of songs I know, he didn't want to hear that. He wanted to say, Jesus, and I didn't know how to do that. So I was a disappointment because there weren't any Puerto Ricans, but you're just black. And so, no, I didn't talk Spanish or anything about Puerto Rico. Nobody was interested, except other Puerto Ricans.
And nobody resented you coming from the north?
The white folks, yeah. Yeah, no. As a matter of fact, I stayed in families where if they had young girls teenage girls always had to develop a crush on you because you were different. You talk funny. You talk funny. That's when you talk about where you were from. Where you from? Oh, you married? All that would go on, and you'd continue the conversation because it's nice to be hit on. Somebody's interested, some nice young person is interested in, and thinks that you're the greatest in the world. Your voice gets a little bit deeper. You know what I'm talking about.
Okay, well, I'll ramble and get to some points too, but I feel very at home here. Only 2 weeks ago, I was speaking about Freedom Summer to a Unitarian Universalist group of senior citizens. Could have been many of the people in this room. We have the UU tours now about twice a year. Some come only as far as Selma, but we get them over to Mississippi, and I usually speak with them. A few days before that, I was with John O'Neill, that you mentioned, on a panel about Free Southern Theater at a production of Robert Shankin's play All the Way, which hopefully some of you in here saw last fall. Shankin gave us permission in Mississippi to have the first production after New York as a part of the Freedom Summer commemoration. So it was there. Had a Harvard thought I should share with you that is fairly current. We did lots of wonderful things, singing and so on, but we actually had a research branch with SNCC in the Atlanta office, with Jack Menace and others, and then in Mississippi. As we approached the summer, we expected many deaths. We wanted to do something to get the local bankers white, the local business leaders white, to put pressure on the local sheriffs white, to control the Klan. We said, how can we get the most influential white leaders in the state to break with the Klan? Not support desegregation, but we would do that fight. And we picked two areas, the piney woods and the plantations, for the agricultural interest in the state. And we're trying to say, who owns the biggest plantation? It wasn't Jim Eastland, and we kept looking. And who is the biggest timber baron in the state? And it wasn't anybody we'd ever heard of. And it turned out that the biggest of those was Delta Pine and Land. And so we said, okay, who are the major stockholders? How do we influence it? And we found out that they were a corporation that wasn't even on the stock exchange. This was a European international corporation 50 years ago, and then we found out that they had had the largest plantations for decades and decades. And we finally said, okay, who has the biggest block of stock in this corporation, and can we get that person under pressure? And we found out a woman called Mrs. Elizabeth Windsor. Yes, yeah. The Queen owned the largest block of stock in the largest plantation, adjacent almost to Jim Eastland's 7,000, had been there, and her blacks didn't vote. She divested very quickly. Modern things about divestment go back, but back to the academic side of looking at it. And then we said, well, what is the leading industry in the state? Well, there were a lot of small things coming along. What's the key to finding the real powerful white men there? And we decided it was utilities. In some places, FDR's New Deal had brought in TVA, and many of those places had started small factories. The line was drawn very carefully where the plantation had black workers, no TVA electricity, no factories, and we're going through hell about that right now. But we said, okay, let's go to where these places are, and the source of energy, and we found out that the major industry providing energy in Mississippi was Mississippi Power and Light, a local utility company. It also was a sister company to New Orleans Public Service. Public service meant very private, and related to Alabama and to Arkansas, separate corporations. And we said, okay, who can we get who will hold a sheriff accountable? And so we had to go back to the stock market and the board and go up, and all of these were held by something like Mid-South Utilities. The names have changed a dozen times since then. And then as we were recruiting, the Crimson knew we were working on this story. We were working on it. The Queen owned the largest share of plantations. The utility electricity company in Mississippi, the largest stockholder was Harvard. And that's 50 years ago. Look where the world is right now. And people said, we cannot do that. We can only make moral decisions that are not based on morality, but on responsibility and duty to our shareholders. But divestment occurred. It had a beginning there. We also had a cultural boycott of sports, musicians. While we brought in people like this, we had people like Brigitte Nielsen cancel a concert when she found out that blacks who attended would go to prison. We worked on those things. They were later used in South Africa and other places. Nothing lasts. About 5 years after Harvard divested, we had a new problem. The Klan was reviving, and we tried to say, okay, who is it this time? And I swear to God, Berkeley had replaced Harvard, the West Coast over the East. Okay. So I mentioned John O'Neill's name that you should know. Owen Brooks, if you remember Owen. Owen came from Roxbury to Mississippi to head the Delta ministry work of the National Council of Churches, and Owen died a few months ago. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I wonder if you would talk a little bit about the role of music in that summer. I know you had a wonderful confluence of the folk music revival and the black church tradition and the passion of what was happening. So can you speak about what it was like to sing?
What it was like to sing?
To sing that summer.
Singing is always the same thrill, but like what was different is that the people sang as a part of their lives. Now, and especially in urban areas, music is entertainment solely. And as entertainment becomes more complex, kids that I sometimes go into schools, they can't sing any of their songs through because the beatbox has to come in here, or you just can't sing a song all the way without going, I love you, you beautiful, This is not a song, but in you don't like that music? Well, no. What they were doing in the South, and I would imagine, when you sing in the church, you sing at home. Your grandma, when she's making them flapjacks, she's with Jesus, whatever they sing, and it was a thrill that I always insist on some to greater or lesser degrees, singing with people. Every time I appear someplace, at least 1, 2, 3 songs, I involve the audience. Sing with me. I think that music it transcends so much. And if I sing with you, we're doing something together that's wonderful. And I like that, and I've always liked it, but I saw it living in the South. Does that answer your question?
I could ask you more, but
It's all right. Thank you. Probably because I just heard him again recently, Friday and Saturday night, Bob Dylan, and then started reading a little of his memoir chronicles. because he spent a fair amount of time around here and wrote these amazing songs about, that sort of gave voice to a lot of the feeling around the civil rights movement and injustice in this country, in the South. Only a Pawn in Their Game, an amazing song. Mm-hmm. And yet, years later, I had an occasion to have a brief conversation with Dave Van Ronk in Passim, in the back room, where he said, Dylan's not interested in politics. He thinks it's all a con. And the trajectory, so I'm interested in, your thoughts, your experience with Dylan, your thoughts about him, but also in particular this gift, amazing gift for giving expression, seemingly to a political voice, and yet apparently not really thinking of himself as being political, at least certainly not now.
I have already said that I'm ego-centered. It is a protection that is afforded me. I mean, in the entertainment business, when you're a platform artist, if people don't like what you're doing, they don't like you. That's the way you feel. A lawyer, when he goes, at the end of the day, goes home, he's not a lawyer around the dinner table, but I'm always me. So like I'm always thinking about myself. It's sometimes kind of not so good. But I say that to say, I was saying to Elijah, I don't like to watch movies. I want to be in them. I don't like so much going to see other singers. I want to sing with them. Because what I do, although I love it and I mean it, and when I say to an audience that I love them, I do. But this is my job. And I think that I can't speak for Dylan, but it's his job to be who he was. And I always felt that he was is very talented, but he was writing songs that would get sung, that could be sold, that he was doing his job. Part of what I do entails the influence of being a black Puerto Rican. I can't put that on the shelf. So although I'm doing my job, I'm also advocating for me and my people. It's different when you're under fire, how you approach something. Dylan was Jewish, but he wasn't. Jewish people have gotten to be other than they are. Kirk Douglas, Tony Curtis, because they're all white. I could change my name 60 million times. I'm still going to be black. So, it's a different impetus. When I write a song or sing a song, and I've sung several of Dylan's songs, that is against the war or against blowing in any of that stuff, I'm singing it coming from a different place, I think. And I want to emphasize again, I cannot speak for Bob Dylan, but I think that Bob Dylan, to his credit actually, was really bolstering Bob Dylan as the legend that he is becoming. And I don't hold it against him. I think, hey, that's cool.
Thank you. His encore, by the way, on this recent tour is Blowing in the Wind. But it's
His what? His encore?
His encore, but it's a very different version.
Because his talent helped him write a song that we all know and love, and it means something to us. I think that's cool. He did that in line of his work. I don't know how he feels about how many roads a man has to walk down before they call him a man. I don't know how he feels. I don't get, and knowing him, or I used to, I never got the sense that was a personal quest for him. I'm not putting Dylan down.
I got it, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Did you learn new songs when you were in Mississippi?
No. I heard songs that I hadn't heard before, but because they were part of a larger experience, I was swept off with the experience. You know what you do when you see a good play or a movie or something, if it is really good, it takes you somewhere. And when I would hear songs that I didn't know, and especially if they were well sung, oh, I went, and I wasn't in the learning mode. I wasn't there to learn. Most of the songs that were sung when I did a concert, one of my songs, you all sing along with me. But like if I went someplace and they were singing something, I heard it and was moved by it. And the songs that were made up in the movement, in the meetings or whatnot, I knew, you ain't scared of your dog because I want, well, that was not a song, a traditional song. So I learned it as it was being made up. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Could you tell us how you were different when you came back from Mississippi from when you drove down there?
How I was different? I'd had an experience that kids I went to school, many, they didn't have. I knew something that they didn't know. I had a different view of the world. I had a different view of white people. I had a different view of the American government. I had a different view of many things that we are taught, and I had to sift it through my basic beliefs. I do not, and don't think I ever could, hate white people, but there is a distrust, and I learned it. There is I am not inferior. I am learning it because the insidiousness of prejudice is that on some level, those who are victims believe the bad things. Don't make me, now you're getting close to me, but it's hard to fight with yourself. To say, yeah, you know. And I learned that that's what I had to do.
Well, you said you looked at Mississippi through a different lens because you were different from your Roxbury neighborhood, and your family was Puerto Rican, and that was part of you. And so it's very interesting to hear how you moved into a different state of differentness, for want of a better expression, and had to look at a lot of other things from a different lens. So thank you very much.
Have you been back to Mississippi since Freedom Summer? And if you have, what do you see that's changed and what do you see that has not changed?
Yeah, I went back a couple of times. I don't know if it was, when did Selma happen? That was in the same summer? 65. So, okay, 64 is Freedom Summer. I went back then. They had a profound experience in that waiting to, the night before, everybody's going to walk across Pettus Bridge. Big, God bless you, people milling around outside this big church. Young white people, left-wingy type white people, and bunches of black people. Man walking around with a black suit, a black jacket, black thing, and the little, strings hanging down, what I forget what you call that thing, and payas, the little curls that he had, and a yarmulke. What are they called? Tallis. Yes, I knew that, but I forgot it. All right. And he's walking around. somehow we got in the same place and had conversation. Thick accent, like the people I told you next door that I loved. I liked them because it was cold. That's the way he's talking. And he showed me he had a tattoo. He was a number. And he didn't know. He said, I don't know what they're singing. I don't know what they're talking. But this shouldn't happen again. You people are making me cry up in here. And I don't know if I like that, but that's what. Okay, when I went there back for that experience, I was observing around. I wasn't doing something. I was going to walk across the thing. But like I was observing what was happening socially in that milieu. And I'd never had an experience like that anyplace. I knew that Jews were in concentration camps. We all do, but I never met a guy who was. I never saw a guy who didn't exactly have a dog in the fight, but he knew what this could be, and he was going to be a warm body there. That touches me so much. The next time I went to Mississippi, I had been doing a concert, a tour of concerts, and I was somewhere near in Mississippi, and I wanted to go back to places that I had been. It was probably, 4 or 5 years later. And what I did was I went to a church that I had been, there to many meetings there, and there was a family, Mr. and Mrs. Carnegie, and they were old and had been married a long time, and I don't think they had kids, or at least they weren't around, and they walked arm in arm and everything. They didn't remember me, but it was good to see them. They were old and had gotten older. They were old when I first knew them. And then several people that I knew, and I knew their names, but they didn't know me. So like I was viewing a somewhat familiar community that I was sort of in, but was no longer in, and was not remembered. Somebody that I had known while I was there came up to me at the church and said, are you new here? And he had known my name. His name was Hiawatha Jackson. And he had known me, but when he spoke to me, he didn't know it. Are you moving into into town? And I didn't say, well, I used to be here, and I just stayed outside and said, oh no, I'm just passing through. But that was also you go in a thing like, se me aflige el corazón. I don't know. This whole subject makes me cry. Say something. No, I guess that's what I signed up for. Go ahead.
Actually, I have two questions. I don't know if
Can you just speak into
I don't know if I could. I'm not as tall as you. If I could ask them both, and then, so first for you, I'm wondering when you got back, did you come back to Boston after that? And then how was it for you, having lived this experience, probably without a network of people, of friends who understood it? How was it for you to readjust, and did you have something else to jump into, maybe your music or something that helped you? How did you make that transition back into your world? That's and I'll come back for the other question.
We tend to romanticize things or make fantasy out of things. When you have a life-changing experience, it doesn't really change your life like that. I just came back home. But I came back home with the knowledge that I can apply or will influence things I do back home. But I just came home. It wasn't I was a changed person and, like it was, I came home. And I still sang. What was the difference was people were starting to be interested in a different kind of music. And whereas before, folks wanted brotherhood and we shall, all that, and the sane nuclear policy, now the emphasis was on Italian shoes and beachfront property. And the music was different. It was the Beatles and all those English people. So my difference change, or what I had to readjust to, was not any wonderful thing about people. It was about, hey, how am I going to make a living? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I think you're also a very a person who's tuned in to cultures, so I can imagine that you can.
I love people, even though they make it hard.
Thank you. So my other question was for
Dr. King?
Professor Dr. King. I was astonished to hear about all of the research that you were doing and trying to get to the source of the power, the financial power. Is there something we can do today with Ferguson? And I'm going to get emotional.
Well, this was work SNCC was doing before they shifted.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, just. Great. Thank you.
I mentioned that because I thought it was a story people didn't know much about SNCC. And the research would have been mostly blacks, but a few whites, even some southern whites were always involved with SNCC. I'm just aware 50 years later that many of the issues that we thought were in the back swamps of Mississippi are still in the world. What the civil rights movement had to do, what we did with Freedom Summer, was let the rest of America and the world see. We demonstrated that black people wanted to vote, they were standing up, they had allies, but they didn't have enough allies. And then we recruited allies. We said, here are the problems. Frankly, those of us in the leadership didn't think we would live through the summer, but we knew that the people at the grassroots level would. When we started learning complexities about who owns what, we were just sort of saying, well, that'll be the next generation of America. Well, that's us now today and the next generation after us. What is power and who uses it and how is it done? And is there such a thing as the people having power? And the Freedom Summer showed that, yes, it is.
So, Jack, I have one more question. Is there anything that we haven't asked you that you thought we would ask or that you would like to say for the record?
For the record, no, I have nothing for the record. I like that I'm being asked questions. And as I said, somehow this whole subject and thing is very emotional for me. So I'm partially trying to rely on my talent as a performer and an actor to be glib, to be engaging, and not to cry. So, no, I have no question that I would ask if I was somebody sitting out there. I mean, I'm not that schizophrenic. This lady, I think, can you?
Thank you both. I was 5 years old when all of that was happening.
Oh, rub it in. You're young.
No, not from that perspective, because I was reared in Louisiana. Oh. What you said tonight is just mind-blowing, because for the last 10 years, I spent my career at a Middle-South utility. It's Entergy. Right, the one that's in Alabama, in Arkansas. And as a person of color in that atmosphere, what just bogs my mind is that what you experienced and saw 50 years ago, I was seeing 3 months ago when I got laid off from my job. And it just saddens me that we haven't, the experience that y'all had 50 years ago, we really haven't gone and progressed very far.
You have to look, because on the face value, things haven't changed, there's still a struggle. And I think that there will be for a long time, but there have been some changes. There have been great changes. Even take Barack Obama, everybody, oh, well, it's all over now because you got a black president. Won't you people shut up? It has, that doesn't change anything, it seems. But it is a change because there is a domino effect in life. This happens and this happens and this. Little kids are growing up more accustomed to seeing authority coming from people that might not look like them. Mm-hmm. Being able to, if they're lost, go up to a policeman and not be afraid that he's a black policeman and not make that distinct. There are changes, and the human mind is so very complex, and it may look like, hey, I'm still in the same hole. You have to know where to look for the changes. I think they're there.
Well, I commend both of you men, and just wish that the world had more people of tenacious character and compassion to make us move forward in a positive. Well, yes, I'm here, and I keep putting myself out there in places just to make people know that we're all human. And I was sitting back there when you were getting full. I had already been full.
Yeah, I know.
It's really easy to feel you're in the United States of America, the land of opportunity, the land of the immigrants that come here for a better life, but people who didn't come here on their own. Mm-hmm. This better life, in a lot of instances, eludes us. God bless you all. I'm so glad to be here. I'm going back to New Orleans on Friday.
Thank
I'm
you.
glad that I was able to come.
Thank you. I don't know who owns the company now, but they probably speak several languages, from Japanese to some Arab language or so on. We are still responsible for what others do in our country. What we learned in the civil rights movement was never say we can't do anything. And when you're down and you feel there's nothing you can do, the smallest step is a terrific step. And you say, we have no friends. That's not quite true. We are never alone. There is something we can do, and why should we assume that it can be done in 10 years while we can see the victory for it? I'd need to add a bit of commercial. The University Press wouldn't like it. I have a book with me which has just been published. That's not why I came here. I was showing my grandchildren Harvard. This is published by the University Press in Mississippi called Ed King's Mississippi. Behind the scenes of Freedom Summer, of stories like we've been hearing here from the perspective of a native white Mississippian who had joined the movement. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This has been an absolutely delightful evening. I thank you for the inspiration that you've given us and your fun. I have two biracial grandchildren, and I'm concerned because of the kind of lack of movement that is happening in this country. There's still so much racism. One of them was subjected when he was 8. He was part of a new class of golf players my husband had enrolled him in. And when my husband went to pick him up, he didn't cry. He just said to his grandfather, "Some boy called me a nigger." And Bob said to him, "Well, what did you say to him?" And I said to him, "You hurt my feelings." I thought it was a fantastic answer. You know, it was beautiful. Yeah. He's now a sophomore in college. Mm-hmm. And his sister, her experience was different. It's just that I didn't even think about these kids as far as color. They're mine, you know? And we were somewhere, we went in for hot chocolate at some kind of a big hotel. When we got outside, my granddaughter said to me, "Grammy, there wasn't a black person in there." It was a very crowded place at a Christmas time or whatever. You know, it occurred to me, we don't even think about it. We're not subjected to that. But, you know, I wanted to kill somebody. You know, she just felt so out of place. And my concern is, when do you think things are going to get better? You know, this stuff is going on still, including Obama. The poor man, his biggest problem is because he was black, and people just don't want him there, no matter how successful he is. They don't want him. Thanks for everything tonight. You give me some hope.
This is a personal question. Of all the songs that you've written personally, what's your favorite line in one of the songs?
Oh, wow, I don't know. I'll get back to, I have to think about that. You know, when you create things, the stuff that comes out, those are my children. These are brain children. And I love all my children. And I don't love one more than the other. I love them differently. Some things that I have done, I really like. And I kind of privately say, "Yeah, I wrote that. That's right. Yeah." Some things don't excite me that way, but I'm still proud of them. So to what I like, what I think I've done best, come see me on my deathbed.
Many years from now.
You hear what many years from now, yes, from your mouth to God's ear.
Okay, and this will be our last question, but please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Landrón. My name is Lexi Lattimore.
Who?
Lexi Lattimore.
Hi.
I'm an African-American female. I'm 22.
And beautiful.
Thank you. And I'm wondering, as you can see around the room, I may be on the younger end, and we're not in high numbers.
Oh, another one. Yeah, you're young. So what?
I know. My point is, how do we engage and empower more young people to be a part of this conversation, both in interacting with this history and with those that have had very direct and intense experiences with segregation, Jim Crow, and racism? And how do we bring into the conversation the experiences that these young people are having right now? And how can we equip adults to facilitate these conversations with these students, young people, kids?
The short answer is I don't really know. But I think that by being who you are, and I'm not being glib when I say, "Hey, you're beautiful, you're this or that." You are beautiful, and you're expressing an interest in something, and just by being you, I'm influenced by you, and people will be. It won't be any big influence like Dr. King had or Obama or any. It's not going to be that. But you are an influence by not being afraid of being who you are. And I see by your hair and whatnot, you have made a statement. Continue to make those statements and don't be cowed. It's not a by the way, the way you're wearing your hair and all that is not a big statement. You're not saying, "Yeah." You're just being, you have the courage to be you. And I think the fact that you are pretty and young and all that, we're drawn to you. So keep showing up and don't back away from what you think and believe. Somebody's going to hear. We can't influence large groups of people, and somebody asking, when is it going to change? I don't know. I don't know if it's going to change before we blow the world up. But I think that you just, every little step, poco a poco se anda lejos. That's what my mother used to say. It means little by little you go far, but it's little by little. And you's a good-looking little honey.
Well, thank you so much, Jack Landron. Thank you all for coming.